Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. A monster annoys me on a plane, but I get back. So this happened to me a few years ago. Senior year of high school, I was taking a plane to visit my grandma. The flight went from Baltimore to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh to Vegas, and Vegas to Boise. The flight from Baltimore was almost empty and I was southwest, so I could choose my own seat. And I was on the same plane until Vegas. I selected the last row of the plane by the window, put my earbuds in and took a nap till Pittsburgh. When the plane landed, I went to the bathroom while people were getting onto the plane. To save my spot, I left my backpack in my seat and put my jacket on the seat and left. When I got back, I noticed that this pregnant lady sitting in my seat and her husband sitting in the aisle seat. With my jacket thrown on the ground in the aisle, with my backpack underneath with a laptop in it. Kind of annoyed, I pointed out that I was previously sitting in the window seat and I wanted to know if I could have my seat back.
"Can't you see that I'm pregnant and need this seat?"
she said aggressively. Then I looked at the husband and asked if he could please scoot over and sit next to his wife. This guy looked me in the eyes and said, "Sorry, but we are allowed to choose our own seats." And I chose the aisle seat. Being a high school senior, I wasn't that big of a guy, but I was still not happy to be sitting in the center seat. Realizing that this was a losing argument and I wasn't going to get any leverage over this lady, I decided to grit my teeth and bear it. I collect my stuff and move into the middle seat. The second I sat down, the lady said,
"You can't have your backpack in your seat. You're going to have to find a place to put it."
"I'm just going to put it under my seat," I respond.
"Where am I going to put my feet then?"
she responded. "I don't know, not under my freaking seat." Growing up, I swore more than most people and really only watch what I say when at school. Suddenly, I felt someone grab my collar. The husband pulled me inches from his face and said, "Don't use that language to my wife or the baby. You will say you're sorry." I was shocked. Not only was this guy grabbing me in public, but at the time I was only 17. I still considered a minor. But not wanting to make a deal out of this, I gave the most fake "I'm sorry" to the woman and put the earbuds in as the flight was getting ready to take off. While taxiing, the lady kept trying to get my attention by yelling in my ear and snapping her fingers inches in front of my face, before she finally pulled my earbuds out.
"You need to take your electronics off during takeoff,"
she said. Now my dad was a pilot for 30 years and he confirmed that electronics doesn't interfere with communications. It is mostly a formality so that people pay attention to the emergency instructions. So I ignore her since we are literally less than a minute from taking off. In rage, she spams the flight attendant button so that one comes. We also had to hold takeoff until this issue was solved. The flight attendant runs over and asks what's wrong, expecting an emergency.
"He will not turn off his electronics before flight. He's trying to kill us,"
she exclaims. Realizing everyone is staring at us when the flight attendant asks me to turn it off, I oblige. After I turn it off, she starts to lecture me about how she was right and I was wrong, rapping how the flight attendant proved her right. So the flight is in the air. And when the intercom tells me we can use electronics, I put my earbuds in and crank it. About 5 minutes into the flight, I feel aggravated tapping on my shoulder. I turn and look at the woman.
"You need to turn that down. It's bad for the baby,"
she said. While I was listening to the music louder than normal, it still wasn't to the point that an unborn baby would be able to hear and be able to understand. Shocked, I responded with no. But the second she reached for the flight attendant button, I said that I would. I did that trick where you turn your volume down 2 times and then up once so that it looks like you turned it down 3 times. Better? I asked. More, she responded. So I went down 1 more. And before I could put my earbuds in, she said, "It is proper etiquette to talk to people you're sitting next to." I just ignored her. I sat back and try and close my eyes, and amazingly this worked. I fall asleep for about an hour. It was a 5-hour flight. When I woke up, this woman had her foot on my backpack with a laptop in it. So I adjust my foot so that it would be uncomfortable for her to continue to keep her feet the way they are. She immediately stood up and I thought she was going to yell given her ability to overreact. But it turns out, she was just getting up to go to the bathroom. She gets past me and her husband when a brilliant idea pops into my head. The second she steps into the bathroom, I get ready to get up and move my stuff over to the window seat. As I grab my backpack and shift my momentum over, I feel a hand grab me. I did not take into account the husband. "You're not taking my wife's seat." "Sir, I have to warn you that you are grabbing a minor. And if I feel like it at any second, I could scream that you are attacking me or you have made inappropriate advances on me." I responded as he lets go and I move over to the seat I had before. When she gets back, she is furious, demanding that I move seats now to the point that the flight attendant comes over to see what is going on. And this time she sides with me. When she asks her husband to make me move, I look him dead in the eyes and he goes back to reading his book. And she sits in the middle seat, pissed as heck. Thankfully, I moved seats because she was up and down in her seat having to go to the bathroom every 15 minutes. And that was pretty much the rest of the flight. Except how she intercepted my bag of pretzels when the drink cart came. I responded by closing the shade to the window as we started to land at the Las Vegas airport. Once off the plane, I went to Burger King to get a drink and some food. Then I got to my next gate and found the last seat. I scarfed down my fries and burger, walked across the hall, literally 10 feet from my seat to throw away my garbage, and when I turned to go back to my seat, I see the same lady now sitting in the seat I had my bag in. She had moved it to the floor right in front of her. Then she shot me this smug grin thinking she had won. Somewhat defeated by losing 2 seats to this lady, losing sleep in my patience, it was time for action. I walked over to her to gather my things and as I got to her I looked her dead in the eyes, raised my right hand out, fingers spread and hovered it right over her stomach, looked down at my hand then back to her eyes. "I just cursed your baby," I say straight-faced, turn around 180, walk across the hall and sit down on the floor, staring at her intensely. Now, I don't believe in curses, nor do I think I have the ability to place a curse, but this lady believed it. Her face was left expressionless, and she just started weeping to herself as I sat and watched. When her husband came over to see what was wrong, and she told him, he instantly stormed over to me and knocked the drink out of my hand, grabbed me by my collar, and got right in my face. "Listen here, you little jerk!" He got out before security guards grabbed the man and detained him. The FAA doesn't mess around with who they hire. One guard asked me why this guy was angry, and I said that his wife had taken my seat and I made a comment under my breath and he got upset with me. The officer asked for my name and identification and saw that I was a minor. He asked if I wanted to press charges and I told him yes, but that I also didn't want to miss my flight. He understood and let me go. Then informed the Southwest Airline gate attendant to please keep track of me in case we needed more information. This meant that I got to get on early and I chose the first seat I could. And I chose the aisle seat to see if this lady would get on the plane. Since she was sitting in the same gate as my flight, she never got on the plane and it takes off. Halfway through the flight attendant asked me if I put a curse on the baby, and I responded with, I don't know magic. 20 minutes later, the flight attendant told me that, unfortunately, I would not be able to press charges on them due to being a minor, but that they missed their flight and they would have to buy a new ticket to their final destination with another airline. With 5 words, I cost this horrible woman and her abusive husband around $500. Serves them right. Next story. Do not mess with someone whose friend has ties to the mob. This is a story that has been told to me by my mother about her father and his friend's family back in the mid-60s. Now a bit of a background here. My grandfather and his friend were childhood friends and were as sick as thieves. They both were first-generation Americans to Polish immigrants and both had jobs at the local water treatment plant. They were inseparable. They lived on the same street, took vacations together, and went bowling every week and did whatever else average Americans in the 60s did. This was true to their kids as well, who were for the most part all around the same age, late teens to early 20s, except for my mom, who was 8 at the time. One Sunday when the friend was supposed to come over to watch football, he failed to show up. His friend was always punctual. So this got my grandfather very concerned. So naturally, he called his house to see what was the matter. His friend was inconsolable, on the verge of tears. This alarmed my grandfather, because this guy was a World War II vet who saw a lot of battle and never showed his emotions. My grandfather quickly found out that the reason was that early that morning, he found his eldest daughter on the front porch badly injured. She had recently broken up with her fiancé and had gone over to his place the night before to get some of her things. The two of them get into an argument which escalated into him beating and harassing her badly. After it was over, she just walked home in shock, and since in her state, had left her keys at his place, she sat on the porch until her father woke up and went out for the morning paper. My grandfather was fuming over this and asked him if they had called the police, to which his friend said that he did, and there was nothing they could do. He explained that the ex had a rock-solid alibi from all of his friends who said they were out drinking that night. When you combined it with them having a publicly known falling out, him being the son of a city councilman and, well, it being the 60s, the cops pretty much shrugged and did nothing. Now even though my mom was so young, she still to this day remembers how quickly he turned from anger to emotionless and almost robotic when he said that I wouldn't worry about it, meaning the investigation. These things have a way of working themselves out, and then saying he would call him back later. My grandfather then told my grandmother, who was in a room and very concerned that he needed to go run an errand. An hour later he came back as if nothing had happened. A few weeks had gone by, and the friend's daughter was slowly healing, but was still in a bad place. The friend was still trying to get something done with the case, but kept hitting a wall due to who the guy was. One day my grandfather suggested they all go to the state fair, which had just come into town, to take their minds off of the incident. His friend didn't want to, but my grandfather insisted, saying that he would even pay. So they all went to the fair and had a pretty good time. The entire time my grandfather insisted on taking group photos together. He even bought several souvenirs for the kids. My mom got a teddy bear, which she still has. When the day was over, they drove home, where they then found a couple police cars in front of the friend's house. The cops were looking for the friend and immediately started asking him questions as soon as he got out of his car. It turns out that morning, as the ex-fiancé was going for a walk, he was just jumped by two large dudes who proceeded to throw him in the back of their car and then dump him in front of the local hospital 3 hours later with every bone in both legs and arms, several ribs, nose and jaw broken. Now it's at this point that I should mention that my grandfather was a high-ranking member in the local labor union when the mafia had serious ties to it. We've never been able to confirm it, but had always suspected that my grandfather had some friends who the FBI were interested in. So as the police questioned my grandfather's friend on his whereabouts that day, my grandfather interrupted to tell the police that they were all together that day. He gestured to the souvenirs and even says if they would wait an hour he'd have the pictures developed that he had taken throughout the day. Eventually, having nothing to go on, they left, and nothing ever came of it. My grandfather's friend just looked at him in disbelief, and before he could even say anything, my grandfather just said, "You know, the crime in this city is getting worse by the day." He then patted his friend on the shoulder and smiled at him. His friend then gave him a big bear hug. He thanked him for their day at the fair, and they called it a night. The two of them stayed friends for the rest of their lives and never spoke about that day again. Fortunately, the friend's daughter was able to heal from the attack and later got married and had a couple of kids. She's still friends with my one aunt, and she's doing great. Now occasionally my mom or one of her siblings would ask my grandfather about this incident and he would just say, "That was such a terrible crime. I hope they catch whoever did that," before changing the subject. While I'm not 100% sure if all of this is true, my mom and two aunts have all separately attributed the story to the same wheelchair-bound local guy who is very wary anytime he sees any member of my or the friend's family around town. Next story. If that's what you really want, Karen. Once upon a time, I was working a seasonal retail job at a craft store chain. It is important to note that for the purposes of their sales, lighted tree toppers, lighted decorations, string lights, etc. were all separate categories. On this fateful day, lighted tree toppers were on sale for 30% off. The rest of the lighted decor on that aisle was not. The sales were very clearly marked, and the section designated clearly as well as the category printed on the package itself. It is even listed in the email that Karen was using to present her coupon. Karen approaches my register with her tree topper. The register recognizes the discounts and applies them automatically in most instances, this being no exception. The 30% off applies itself. Your total will be $18.90. Karen then presents her 20% off coupon. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This coupon is not applicable to sale items."
Those aren't on sale. The lights aren't on sale this week.
I show the copy of our sale bulletin on my counter. "I apologize for the confusion, ma'am. This actually falls under the tree topper category. You'll see here it's 30% off. I won't be able to apply the coupon, but you will be getting the already discounted sale price."
I'm telling you, I don't want any sale. You are going to take my coupon.
I should probably mention that she was in at least once weekly, yelled about sales and coupons every single time, and then declared she was never coming back, only to be back the following week to do the same thing. "Ma'am, I would have to manually override the sale price and apply the coupon manually as well."
Then do it. I'm telling you, it is not on sale, and I'm using my coupon or I'm reporting you.
"Yes, ma'am, if you insist." I got visual confirmation from my supervisor in the way of a hand signal we used to mean, "Go ahead." She was not too happy when I did exactly as she demanded, and her total came up to $21.60.
You're stealing from me. I demand to speak to a manager. I'm never coming back here again.
My shift supervisor had been on the next register over the whole time to combat the afternoon rush. That's how she managed to give the visual approval in the moment. She took great joy herself in telling Karen, "You have the exact discounted price you demanded. You can pay it or leave it. Oh, and you're never coming back? Do you promise?" Karen paid her $21.60 with her head hung. And she was back next week. Of course. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.